Ever get that feeling where your emotions are just, well, running the show,
Yeah.
and you wish you could get a better handle on them?
Yeah, like you're trying to figure things out, but it's all a bit overwhelming.
Exactly. So that's what we're digging into today on the deep dive. We're looking at emotional health, emotional well-being, what it all means.
And we've pulled together insights from quite a few places. We looked at articles from Definitive Healthcare, Medical News Today, Healthline, WebMD, and also Talkspace.
Right. So a good mix of perspectives.
Definitely. And each one gives a slightly different angle on this, really essential part of just being human. Our aim is to kind of connect those dots for you.
Yeah, connect the dots and really unpack it. Go beyond just a simple definition. We want to look at what makes it tick, why it's so important for relationships, even physical health.
And the practical side, too.
Absolutely. Give you practical strategies you can actually use. Think of it as maybe a shortcut to feeling a bit more emotionally grounded.
And just to start us off, it's probably worth saying, emotional health isn't about being happy 247, right?
Oh, definitely not. That's key.
It's much more about recognizing, acknowledging, and kind of navigating the whole spectrum of feelings, even the tough ones.
Okay, so let's really get into the definitions then. What is emotional health? What are the main ideas that kept coming up in these sources?
Well, definitive healthcare, they talk about how we think and feel, but also our ability to cope, with life's curveballs.
The ups and downs.
Exactly, and that sense of well-being overall. They also mention something important, understanding not just our emotions, but other people's too, that interaction piece.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not purely internal. What about medical news today? They mentioned the National Center for Emotional Wellness, right?
They do. Their angle is more on awareness, understanding, and acceptance of our feelings. That acceptance part really stands out.
Accepting them even if you don't like them.
Precisely. Acknowledging they're there, and then managing them effectively, especially when things are challenging. They basically equate it with emotional well-being or wellness.
Interesting. So definitive healthcare emphasizes coping. Medical news today emphasizes acceptance as maybe the first step towards managing.
Yeah, subtle differences.
Yes.
Talkspace keeps it pretty straightforward, personal thoughts, feelings, emotions. And they stress how vital it is for just, a balanced everyday life, the foundation.
Right. And WebMD, they bring in the practical side again.
They do. Coping with positive and negative emotions, being aware, having good coping mechanisms, actual tools, and also, crucially, knowing when maybe you need to reach out for help.
Professional help.
Yeah, and they frame it as one key part of overall mental health.
Okay. So the common thread seems to be awareness, understanding, and then actively doing something with those feelings, navigating them somehow.
Spot on. It's that active engagement, not just being sort of carried along by the emotional current.
Right. Okay. So we have a clear idea of what it is, but why does it matter so much? What's the real world impact?
Well, definitive healthcare suggests that good emotional health gives you more, let's say, control over your thoughts, feelings, actions.
Which sounds pretty empowering.
It is. It means you're not just reacting all the time. And this helps you handle challenges better, bounce back faster from setbacks. They also link it strongly to relationships, fighting loneliness, and even physical health.
Physical health again, like blood pressure.
Lower blood pressure, potentially healthier weight, reduced risk of heart disease, yeah. That mind-body connection is a recurring theme.
It really is striking, and medical news today, referencing the NIH, they build on that.
They do. They say our emotional well-being affects, well, pretty much everything. How we function day to day, handle stress, adapt to change, respond when things get really tough.
Like major life events.
Exactly. And it impacts work, relationships, the whole picture. And they warn that if emotional health suffers, it can actually contribute to physical problems.
Higher blood pressure, yes, but also a weaker immune system. More illness.
Wow. So it's definitely not just all in your head.
Not at all. Talkspace echoes this idea of it being multi-layered. They say tending to emotional health keeps your whole being healthy. When you're emotionally healthier, you're better equipped to handle distress, build strong relationships.
And maybe even spot when things are going off track earlier.
Yeah, notice when you need to course correct. It helps you feel better about yourself, your connections, and just manage life's stressors more effectively, like having a well-oiled machine for life.
And WebMD loops back to that mind-body link too, right? Mentioning behaviors.
Yes, they point out how our emotional state can influence things like smoking or drinking as ways to cope with stress, which then obviously impacts physical health.
So it's all tangled together, like a web. Pull one strand and the others move too. That's a great way to put it. What comes through really clearly from all these sources is that emotional health isn't optional. It's not a luxury. It's fundamental to our overall health.
Okay, that's clear. So, thinking about the real world, what kinds of things actually influence our emotional well-being? What pushes us off balance or helps keep us steady?
Medical news today flags some pretty significant external factors. Things like challenges at work or school, relationship difficulties, stress at home.
The daily grind stuff?
Yeah, but also bigger shifts,
Mm.
changes in your health, relationships ending or changing. Retirement is a big one that can affect your social life, your sense of purpose.
Definitely.
And major events like losing someone close or even just moving house, these big life waves.
Those big transitions can really shake things up. What else? Does Talkspace add anything?
They mention things like work-life balance or lack thereof, and the impact of toxic relationships, that constant drain. But they also bring in internal factors.
Waste genetics.
Genetics, yeah. Environmental factors around you. And even your physical health status, feeding back into your emotional state. It's a real mix of the external and the internal.
So it's complex. What's happening around us interacting with what's going on inside us.
Exactly that. A constant interplay.
Okay. Now, this is important. How do you know if your emotional health or someone else's might be struggling? What are the signs to look out for?
Medical news today gives a really thorough list. Things like persistent sadness or feeling hopeless, being much more irritable, maybe tearful or angry more often than usual.
Pulling away from people.
Social withdrawal, yes. Losing interest in activities you normally enjoy. Big changes in eating or sleeping habits. Too much, too little.
That restlessness feeling, too?
Feeling restless or agitated, yeah. Constant fatigue, low energy, trouble concentrating. Also, neglecting self-care basics.
Hygiene and things.
Yeah. And finding it hard to keep up with work or studies or just daily tasks. Mood swings that feel quite dramatic. And then, more seriously, thoughts about death or suicide, any self-harm, or relying heavily on substances.
That's quite a range. Does it look different in children?
They mentioned for children things like sleep difficulties, significant changes in behavior, withdrawing socially, self-harm, or just a real lack of interest in anything can be key signs too.
That's helpful. What about WebMD? Do their signs overlap?
Definitely overlap. WebMD mentions isolating yourself, feeling that low energy, the sleep and eating changes too. Increased substance use is on their list. Racing thoughts.
Performance dips.
Lower performance at work, yeah. More arguments or conflicts. Those feelings of irritability, guilt, hopelessness, feeling worthless. And they also mentioned neglecting hygiene.
So it sounds like both sources are pointing towards noticeable, persistent shifts. Changes in mood, behavior, how well you're functioning day to day. Those are the red flags.
Exactly. Occasional bad days are normal, of course. But these sources highlight when changes are significant and stick around. That's when emotional well-being might need some real attention and support.
This is really useful just for self-awareness, you know? Okay, let's shift gears. What can we actually do? What are the practical steps our sources suggest for improving emotional health?
Right, the actionable stuff. Definitive Healthcare offers some good foundational strategies. Things like pausing to think before you react.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True, but important. Also, developing more awareness of your emotions and your typical reactions. Actively managing stress. Finding healthy ways to actually express feelings, not bottle them up.
Physical health comes in again.
Yep. Prioritizing physical health. Striving for balance in life. Seeking purpose and meaning. Connecting with others, that social piece again. And trying to cultivate a positive outlook. Kind of the building blocks.
Okay. And medical news today, they get more specific with techniques. They mention the NIH and NCEW.
They do. They get quite detailed. They suggest mindfulness practices like deep breathing, mindful walking or eating, body scans. For managing stress, prioritizing sleep, regular exercise, building social support, setting realistic priorities.
Relaxation techniques, too.
Relaxation techniques, self-compassion, being kinder to yourself, and seeking professional help when needed. They also talk about cultivating a positive mindset.
How? What does that involve?
Things like actively noticing good things, forgiving yourself, practicing gratitude, spending time with positive people, focusing on your values, and making self-care non-negotiable.
Okay.
And they really emphasize strengthening social connections, joining groups, nurturing relationships, asking for help, making classes, volunteering, even travel. For coping with loss, specifically, talking to loved ones, self-care, support groups, avoiding huge decisions while grieving, and considering counseling.
That's a lot. And the NCEW part.
NCEW adds things like labeling your feelings, just naming them can help. Understanding the link between thoughts and feelings. choosing your thoughts more consciously, letting go of those repetitive negative thought loops.
Accepting discomfort.
Accepting that discomfort is part of growth, yes. Talking things through, using exercise or music as outlets, face-to-face communication, and actively working towards the kind of person you want to be. It's a really rich toolkit.
It really is comprehensive. What does Talkspace add to this?
Talkspace reinforces a lot of that and adds some great points. They stress actively building your support system. Exercise, again, for the endorphins, sleep benefits, mood boost, focus, reducing anxiety and depression risk.
Managing anxiety specifically.
Yeah, suggesting healthy eating, creative outlets, breathing, grounding techniques, meditation, yoga. They also highlight investing in hobbies that's important, self-care and stress relief, being mindful of substance use, eating well brain food.
They mention meditation benefits specifically.
They do. Focus, self-awareness, self-esteem, lower stress anxiety, more energy, better information processing, even higher pain tolerance, and help with addiction. It's powerful stuff. They also suggest building on your strengths, finding opportunities and challenges, building resilience, developing a healthy self-concept, learning coping skills, living with purpose.
And therapy.
And definitely seeking therapy when you need that extra support.
Okay. And finally, WebMD. Do they echo these themes?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They talk about a balanced lifestyle, work, personal, activity, rest, moderation, staying connected, especially in person, meditating to notice thoughts and emotions without judgment, watching your self-talk, that internal chatter,
Setting goals?
setting achievable goals and celebrating wins, yes, moderating substances, learning resilient strategies, getting enough sleep, they link it to emotional empathy and processing, regular exercise, aiming for 30 minutes daily, finding meaning, and again, knowing when to seek help.
It's striking how much agreement there is, really. So many common threads.
There really are.
Yeah.
And we can actually boil these down into maybe 5 or 6 key themes for you, our listener, to think about.
Okay, let's do that.
First, there's mindfulness, just being present and aware without judging your thoughts or feelings. Second, stress management, finding healthy ways to cope, like sleep, exercise, relaxation. Third, positive mindset, practices like gratitude, self-compassion. Fourth, social connection building and maintaining that support network is huge.
Right.
Fifth, physical well-being, diet, exercise, they directly impact your emotional state. And finally, number 6, seeking support, knowing it's okay, even strong, to ask for professional help when things feel too big to handle alone.
That's a great summary. It makes it feel more manageable breaking it down like that. Now, one last clarification point that seems important. Mental health versus emotional health. They sound similar, but are they the same? What do the sources say?
Good question. Talkspace draws a useful distinction. They see mental health as broader, how your mind understands and processes information, experiences. Emotional health is more specific, how well you manage and express the emotions that come from those experiences.
So they don't always line up perfectly.
Exactly. Talkspace points out you could have a mental health condition but still have good emotional regulation skills, or vice versa, no diagnosed condition, but real struggles managing intense emotions. Emotional health is focused on navigating feelings. Mental health includes cognition, focus, decision-making, that sort of thing.
And WebMD, how do they frame it?
WebMD positions emotional health as one vital part of overall mental health. They define it by that ability to cope with emotions, self-awareness, regulation, having coping skills. They do differentiate mental illness, noting it often has deeper roots, maybe chemical imbalances, trauma.
But the strategies overlap.
Yes. Crucially, they say the strategies we've discussed for boosting emotional health are valuable for everyone, whether or not they have a diagnosed mental illness. So distinct concepts, but very much interconnected and influencing each other.
Okay, so emotional health is like a key skill set within the broader landscape of mental well-being.
That's a perfect way to think about it. Building those emotional health skills helps build resilience and navigate life, regardless of your overall mental health picture.
This has been incredibly insightful, really helpful. To wrap things up for you, our listener, what are the absolute key takeaways to hold on to from this deep dive?
Okay, 3 main things, I think. First, remember, emotional health isn't fixed. It's a dynamic skill, something you can actively work on and improve over time.
It's learnable.
Exactly. Second, it's absolutely fundamental to your overall well-being. It touches everything mental, physical, social health. It really matters.
And
Third, there are loads of practical, actionable things you can do, from small daily practices like mindfulness to bigger things